And we're back. Hello, everyone, to another episode of the Bardcast. I am Chris, I play Corey, and today with me, as always, is...
Sammy, and I play as Bingro.
And we have a special guest. Today with us again is also Xepel.
Yeah, I'm Evan. I play Xepel.
We're super glad to have you back. We really enjoyed talking with you last time, and we're really excited because today we get to talk about something that we all worked on a couple weeks ago now, a contest that we all wrote pieces for, writing pieces for another character from Clan Lord, Michael. Now, Michael was always a bit of an interesting character. How do you remember him, Xepel?
I mean, he was always a very, gruff and crude sort of individual. I remember, in the beginning when I was just a newbie, he was, one of the rancors in the game, and I knew him best from actually the news groups where he would post, rants and those sorts of things. So yeah, that's basically how I remember him.
Mm-hmm. Now, I have slightly different memory because I was originally in the guild, or the clan, I should say guild, wow. The clan, the Brotherhood of Independence, which I think eventually sort of morphed into Neka no Kesha, the current strongest guild, as far as I can tell. So he was slightly more polite to me, but yes, I do remember lots of copious amounts of swearing, very, very strong fighter, and known for hitting very hard, which in Clan Lord means that if you hit something you're not supposed to, it takes a while to regain your balance. You can hit again. So hitting small things like rats and vermin, not his favorite thing. Is that about right?
Yeah, I definitely remember him complaining about those sorts of things and just, like the savannah, those sorts of places where there are always just copious amounts of vermin just were definitely not his favorite areas.
Yeah. Oh, man. Now, Bingro, I know that you played the European version. I never get the name right. Was it Arundel or Arelon?
It was Arundel. Arelon is the city, the town center.
Gotcha.
It's called Arelon.
Gotcha. Do you have any memories of Michael? Did anything creep across the pond?
No, not at all. I haven't had the chance to meet him in person. So or at least I can't remember.
Mm-hmm. So you just knew him by reputation only? Yes,
and I was quite happy that Azriel gave me some kind of how was he characterization.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, the way I understand it or remember it was that Azriel suggested that he wanted to run this contest several months back and wanted to theme it around Michael. If I remember correctly, Azriel gave some fairly detailed suggestions, such as using a two-born for Michael because it's got that big low sound, and then possibly using something like Xylo to represent the rats, because I think he was originally planning it to be sort of like Michael and the rats, something like that.
Yeah, I mean, we can talk more about this when we get into the music that we wrote, but I thought his description of what he wanted out of the music was really great and detailed and made a lot of sense to me.
Bingro, what did you think?
For me, as someone who didn't know Michael, that helped a lot, just having some guidelines where to head when starting to write the music. And as soon as we come to my piece, you'll hear that I followed a lot of his ideas. I diverted from a few of them, but I think that goes under creative freedom. So that's totally fine.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. I, on the other hand, as usual, understood the rules, understood the expectations, and went off in an entirely different direction. Not entirely different, but
sure.
You know me. Well, shall we talk about, Bingro, since you're mentioning it, shall we talk about your piece first?
Yes, how about I read or summarize what he gave us as a kind of guideline first, so everybody knows what our initial task was, so everybody can maybe follow along. I think W also followed that path quite closely, so maybe that might help understanding what we've been doing and thinking when we wrote the music.
Sure, that sounds great.
You're fine with that? Yeah. Cool, let's go. So Michael's Lamentus as we'll hear it, starts with some brash, a slow theme suggesting a big hitter going by, in brackets Tuborn. And then you start hearing a second theme, little plings, in brackets maybe on a xylo. That starts slowly but relentlessly, keep on coming quicker until that's pretty much all you can hear. The Michael part should feel solid, and the Vermin part more airy and carefree. So the song ends with the bass notes in resignation to the happy end theme.
All right, then, with that description in our ears and our minds, let's take a listen to Bingro's version of Michael's Lament. Very nice. So, what were you thinking when you got started? How did you interpret the prompt?
I was quite intrigued by actually one of your pieces, Coriakin, the ostinato one, I think you just called ostinato. So that was something I was thinking about for a long time. And the ostinato itself, which is introduced right at the start, was a real shower thought, if you can call it that. And I had this idea, and that was the product that I got with some refinement from that thought. And having an ostinato brings some problems. So,
sorry, can I interrupt for 1 second, actually? Just for anyone who's listening but doesn't know, the word ostinato refers to a short melodic fragment or rhythm, a piece of melody that gets repeated over and over the way through. Like if you're listening to the two-horn part, it's the same thing almost the whole way through as the other instruments are doing things on top of it.
Exactly, thanks. The problem is with ostinatos that them being played over and over again and having no changes to the bass line in that case brings the problem that you kind of get bored pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So I had to work with different ideas to deal with that. One was with the vibra. I did do some harmonization, those plinks, to refer to Azriel's prompt. The bum, 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 bum. So I have the ostinato play twice and have different harmonies in the vibra over that. So maybe if we could just play the first few measures again,
sure,
so people can maybe hear, and I'll try to talk over that.
All right, so here's the ostinato to start with.
Yes.
So you can hear this like downward pattern, which works really, really well, and then walks back up to the start.
And that's the vibra, the first row.
Yeah.
And then the ostinato comes again, but the harmonization is different.
Nice.
So that was one idea. So I was able to stretch the whole thing a bit further and maintain some kind of interest, because some things do actually change. That was one idea I had. And then I stole something from you, Coriakin, as you know. I was showing you what I got so far, and you had a better idea, and I took at least one little thing. The first thing you hear when the violin enters.
Well,
that
can I jump in for 1 sec, actually?
By Coriakin. Sure.
Sorry, just what interested me is I come from a jazz and blues background, whereas you very much do not. So when I heard that line, I'm like, oh, you got this sick, like, slow 12/8 blues going in there, and you're like, what are you talking about? So that kind of the grace note figure is very, very common for that style of music, which is why I suggested it. So I'm very, very glad you stole that. Good for you.
Yeah, and we've been talking about being a kleptomaniac, and being a musician is pretty much the same thing. So yeah, I'm glad I did steal that as well.
Corey has lots of good things to steal from, so it's a good idea to constantly steal from him.
Well, you know what they say. If you steal from one thing, it's plagiarism. If you steal from 5 things, it's research.
True. I like that. I do research a lot.
Yes, indeed.
That's the main idea that I had going into this.
Now, one thing that was really interesting for me is where you start slowing things down in the ostinato, which is, again, it's still there, but you really slow it down while things change on top of it. Why did you decide to do that, or what made you follow this path? I believe it's around here. And then... So it's the same pattern in the two-born, but it's much slower.
Yeah, that was another idea, to keep things interesting while maintaining the ostinato. So I did this slowing it down, and when we come to the C section, the second interlude, if you wanted to call it that, then I doubled the speed. So that was the idea, what I wanted to do with that ostinato during that whole piece. So I have the ostinato that is settled and everybody knows it. Then I take it in half the speed, and I have another section with double speed. I try to find musical ideas that work for each section and also fit the theme that Azriel gave us. And I think the first interlude with the, so I call it B section, is kind of related to counterpoint, which is a very old technique of composing, basically, and has a very strict set of rules. It's no strict counterpoint that I did, because I don't know how to write strict counterpoint, but there are similarities, I'd say. And I wanted to do that for quite some time, and I finally had the chance to do that.
If I can jump in, one of the things that really interests me about the way you chose to do that is that when you slow down the ostinato, it really gives this sense of whatever Michael's doing is just grinding to a halt. And then when it speeds up later, it gives it a lot more energy. It makes it really more, gives the piece more momentum, which I quite like, just leading into the end.
Yeah, and that was something I explored or found out after I wrote the ostinato, that it also works with double the speed. Not every piece of music works the same. So having an idea that I can use in both ways, having it slowed down and having it sped up, really helped the overall idea I had, and I wanted to maintain. I didn't have to fiddle around with stuff. I think I did fiddle around with the slow version at the end when we have that chromatic getting up to the Ayagan, where I just had a punctuated. I don't know if that's the correct English word. When instead of da da da, I have da 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 da. In German, it's punctuated. So I don't know. But you get what I want to say. That's, I think, the only real change I made to the ostinato when slowing it down.
That's really cool. When I use ostinatos, I am always just trying to look for excuses to change it up at some point. It's hard to stay like really locked into something. It is very, very limiting.
True, but I wanted it that way. That was the idea, and I had to follow through.
Yeah. And it worked.
Did you have a story in your mind that you were telling with this song? Because I know you've got like maybe Michael as the two-born, and you've got the Vermin as the vibra. Like, does the violin mean something? I really like the violin part, but is it meaningful in your mind to some sort of story you're playing?
Not really. The violin was more, I think it's a very distinct sound. You can really easily get the feeling that this is the melody, and that's a bit more exponentiated. It's more, you hear the violin, you know that's the main idea that I wanted to focus on. It's not like I did choose, for example, the silo, which is way more muffled in the sound and doesn't stand out that much. So I wanted to have usually we can take the violin, and I like the violin. Other bards tend to use some kind of flute, which I did in the past as well, but those are usually the choices I can go through. And at this point I stuck with the violin. But yeah, good thinking in the end, but there was no deeper meaning behind the violin at all.
Yeah, I mean, I guess so I obviously didn't write it, so I'm putting my own thoughts and feelings on top of it. But to me, the violin is sort of this mournful, like, oh man, this is like it is the narrator of the story, where you've got Michael and the vermin, and now you've got the narrator saying that this is how it's going, and it's not going so great for Michael. Like, this is not a happy story with a happy ending. That's what my mind goes to when I'm sort of thinking about it and listening to it.
Yeah, I like that. I like that interpretation. I could have been thinking that.
Just
Let's say I did.
It makes sense to me as well.
Being a kleptomaniac and a musician.
I mean, that's one of the fun things about music is that we put stuff out there and people interpret it in different ways. And sometimes you hear someone else's interpretation, and even as the creator, you're like, yeah, I wish I'd meant that all along. Or maybe not. That happens to me frequently, actually. Anything else you wanted to mention about this one?
I think we got to the juice of the idea and of the song itself.
Cool. All right. Well, I really enjoyed the piece, and I had lots of fun listening to it and diving into it more deeply with you. But I'd love it if we could actually take a look at Xepel's piece next, if you'd like.
Yeah, let's go for it.
So what were you thinking when you heard that prompt? What made you choose to go in this direction? Or I guess we should hear it first. Sorry.
Well, so I will briefly recap the prompt, because how I wrote this was I saw the prompt and was like, I'm going to do exactly that. So the prompt starts with some brash, slow theme, suggesting a big hitter going by on a two-born. Then you see a second theme of little plinks, maybe on a xylo. Start relentlessly coming on quicker and quicker until it's all you hear. Michael Partridge feels solid, Berman more airy and carefree. Ends with the bass notes and resignation to the happy end theme. So basically I saw that and was like, yep, I have no creativity. Let's just do it.
All right. Well, with that in mind, let's listen to it. Also, I'm going to come back to that with no creativity part, but we'll talk about that later. I like that one.
So basically, I followed the outline. You got brash slow theme on a two-born check. When I was writing that part, I'm like, oh, we've got Michael. He's stomping around. In my mind, Michael is not a very graceful person. He is, very brash and crude and very straightforward. So his part is very straightforward. It's got a little stumble at the end of each line because he's not super, like graceful, as I said. Second theme on a xylo, check. We've got the vermin theme, as instructed, much lighter. We got these quick little short notes, little breathers in between. As it gets repeated, I basically just add more layers of the same sort of theme on top of it, basically indicating, hey, we had one vermin, now we got two, now we got three, now we got five, which is really what happens when you're, running through an area.
Yep.
And then we go to the fight scene where each theme is battling for dominance. So we've got sometimes Michael's theme is higher, it's on top, and sometimes the vermin theme is higher on top. When Michael's theme is on top, we're in minor because Michael's not happy. When the vermin's theme is on top, we're in major because these vermin, they're just having a great time. Poor Michael is just being surrounded by them. And again, as it goes on, just add more layers, more notes to the vermin theme, basically indicating there's more and more of them until we get to like a little final battle where it seems like Michael's won because he sort of gets the last word in the fake ending. But then we have a reprise to the beginning of him walking up, but the vermin are all there. Up there, they surround him again. Vermin really are on top at the end.
The classic Coriakin inspired fake ending.
I love the fake endings.
Yes.
Coming from you, I think, if I can recall correctly, it got a few guys. I think a few clapped too early.
Yes, that's the goal, right?
Oh, it always is. It always is. Can I just jump in here for a sec? Because there's some really cool stuff you're doing there.
Yeah.
That crack about no creativity is very much not sitting right in my stomach because it's when you have very strict limitations that you're trying to work with, you actually have to be more creative to try and work around them, just like we were talking about with the ostinato. And we were talking about these two competing themes, like you're trying to follow this. I would not ever have thought of using this idea of modal mixture where you've got minor and major at the same time. And the way that they play next to each other clashes in this delightful way, like especially at the end. Can I just play the ending one more time?
Yeah, go for it.
It sounds like it's major there. I think it's in D, right? Yeah. The F sharp there, or like the F sharps in the xylo are like, this is very, very much in major. Everything's happy. And then we get the B flat and the F natural in two board. And I'm just like, it hurts a little bit. It really works. Anyway, I like that choice. Choice.
Yeah, I wanted to sort of like really nail the theming on Michael versus the vermin. So it was, to me, this was a story that I was telling, and less about. I mean, the musical aspects totally come into it and are expressed through the story that I'm trying to tell.
And I'm really glad we have the chance to talk about your pieces or our pieces in general today, because you can get the idea of the story you had in mind, and if you tell it well, some people might really get the idea and maybe even get the story, but having the confirmation that that was your thought and that was the story you had lined out for yourself when writing the song, that is something you don't usually get when you listen to music and don't have any personal connection to the composer himself or herself. So I'm glad we had the chance to talk about that today.
Yeah, for sure. That's why this Bardcast is so great, is because you get to hear what people are actually thinking when they wrote things, or not thinking. I don't know what you guys do.
I guess you were thinking more than you give yourself credit for.
Yeah, I actually, I just wanted to. I was looking at I have the notes over here, so I was looking at that fight scene where you were talking about the specifically the xylo part going high and low. Mind if I listen to that one more time?
Yeah,
Just
go
'cause
for it.
I love the way that you pass the melody between like chords down low, melody up high, to chords up high, melody down low. And I've always been not a huge fan of the xylo because the bottom register sounds really clunky to me. But
Mhm.
you make it work, and I'm trying to figure out why. Let's listen to it one more time. So this is just the xylo part with no two-word. With the other part, it's... And here's where it goes low. Did you actually change the two-bar line from when it goes low to when it goes high?
Yeah, it does change.
Oh, okay, cool. I think you kept it's because you kept the rhythm the same. I didn't actually notice that at first. So, I don't know. It's a nice little touch.
Yeah, because I mean, it's supposed to fade into the background because, you know, you're supposed to be paying attention to the xylo at times, and then you're supposed to be paying attention to the two-born at times. And so I wanted to sort of still, like, they match up. So because we're going major minor, things do have to change. We do have that sort of conflict at the end, but that's because I'm showing that the vermin win.
I think that's about all I wanted to ask about this. Bingro, did you have anything else you wanted to say?
You've been talking about seeing the different ideas and having them being distinguished from each other, even if they played at the same time. I wouldn't have heard that there's minor and major going on at the same time. That's beyond my ability. But knowing that is something that makes your music, Xepel, so interesting, because you can hear for your music once or twice and you think, yeah, I figured out that and that's cool. But there's another layer that even with some musical training, you don't get that idea that you actually had in mind. Me being kind of trained in music, I enjoy discovering more and more when listening to it. And after that, talking about it and discovering even more stuff. So that's awesome to hear. And I think that's a really Xepel-esque piece. I did ask you for a few songs back in the day, and you did write a few, and you have your style. You introduce some idea, just like you do at the beginning of this one with the two-born, and you keep that pretty much the same throughout the whole piece, but you change things up and you mix them around and you do stuff that makes the music interesting while staying kind of similar, but not completely. And I like this way of thinking you have with music.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. This is a Xepel piece, and it's sort of just something I've developed as a way to be lazy, well, not to be lazy, but to develop ideas, to basically take one idea and make it into a bunch of ideas. Because, I mean, this was written over the course of one day, like just straight start to finish. I'm not Corey. I can't go back and revise things. I said I was going to go back and add to it and revise it, but like I went back to it and was like, you know what? It's good enough. So, but yeah, I mean that's what I like to do is like to I'll have an idea and be like, oh, that's a really good idea. I should do it like a bunch of times, but slightly different. And it works out.
Yeah. Well, I mean that's how people develop musical styles or any sort of creative style. You're just presented with problems like, I have this idea, it's only 10 seconds long, how can I make a 3-minute piece out of it? So we tend to solve problems the same ways, and that's how styles develop. But yeah, also
but having the limitations that we are presented with in our clan notation forces us, or at least forces me, to solve things differently than other musical instruments can. So I do feel like there's some kind of, everybody evolves some kind of clan lord style of music as a composer. So if you would give, I don't know, Taylor Swift the possibilities we have, I think her music would sound completely different from what she's doing right now. because she has different limitations and has to come up with different ideas to work around that.
Yeah, and I mean, I think there are a lot of limitations that we work with that sort of force those decisions. For instance, the sort of 3-octave limitation, which came into a lot in my piece because I had basically these 3 separate parts that I wanted to keep separate, which were the tuba and the vibra, and then just sort of a background chord that I was playing. And so I wanted, like, 3 was the most that could work out anyway, because I tried to keep them to separate octaves to make sure that they were all clear. But that was something that had to be done because of the Clanlord way of writing music.
Yeah, and then we have Coriakin cheating with the 3 octaves by using a harp and a lyra at the same time.
Yep.
Isn't it only cheating if you get caught?
You did get caught.
Oh,
we know what you're
Just
doing.
now.
I know.
We know what you're doing.
To be honest, if I remember back in the day, I was one of the Maz's like beta testers for the Clanlord Tune Helper because I kept breaking it by doing weird things.
Nice.
Well. Yeah, but I was just on that subject of what you were talking about in limitations. Even in quote unquote the real world or with real instruments, composers place limitations on themselves so that they are forced to solve problems in different ways, so that they avoid ending up doing the same thing over and over again. I mean, what is that crack about Vivaldi that he didn't write all those string concertos? He just wrote one string concerto like 100 times or whatever.
Wow.
That's a little mean, but you know, I see where people are coming from. It's just too much of the same thing in a row does get boring. So you want to make sure it's not too boring.
And that's also why. So this piece is short. It's like a minute and a half, and that's because I got to the point where I'm like, I've repeated things enough. I've elaborated on the theme as much as I wanted, and that was it. And that was all I needed. When I wrote it, I was like, this is like too short. But coming back to it, I'm like, no, this is appropriately long. It does what I want it to do, and it's over. And that's all I can ask for.
And that's perfectly fair. I've actually been trying to do the same thing with some of my recent pieces. Just be like, no, say something and just be done with it. Don't prattle on for 4 minutes, Corey.
I did once write a trio that's like 10 minutes long that has lots of loops in it. I think I played it once.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, don't do that.
You know what? Let's hear it again sometime. So you were saying?
Yeah, I think you said something very fitting. I think last time we did the Bardcast, Coriakin, when you said a piece isn't only done when there's nothing more to add, but also when there's nothing to take away from it.
Yeah. Also stole that one, of course.
Of course.
But it's really true. It's really, really true.
Someday we'll find out every single piece Coriakin ever played was stolen somewhere.
I've been better. Those first few, there's some early ones that I don't play very often. Anyway, moving on.
Yeah, let's hear what you've got.
All right.
Because we'll hear a completely
How much is
different
stolen
take.
that one?
Sure. All right. So let's find out how I cheated on this contest.
You cheated on it by
you were the only one who didn't follow the prompt, and
You're
you
like,
were the
"Hey,
one
this
in
is
the
prompt."
end. So
I thought I was. No, I guess I didn't, did I? Okay, so I was sitting down and I was trying a bunch of different stuff, and so much of it was sounding samey. I wrote what sounded sort of like a jazzy two-born bass thing, and I realized that I was just ripping off what Bingro was doing. And then I was trying to poke...
Which is totally fine, because everything I do is there is some room for perfection, which you could provide.
Oh, that's very nice of you to say. Thank you very much.
You did that with my suite.
I literally just copied and pasted, but if you enjoyed it, then I'm happy.
I do enjoy it every single time.
Thank
We
you.
do have to make an episode on that as well sometime.
It's on the list. Okay, so basically I poked around with Two-Born, came up with something I didn't really like. I saved it, put it somewhere, never looked at it again. I came up with a Xylo thing I didn't really like, and then I ended up coming up with something that sounded an awful lot like a sort of almost like a Latin style bass line. I wonder if I can dig it out. It's actually this part. And I just wrote this down. I'm like, okay, that sounds kind of cool. And then I actually looked at the notes I'd written, and it was in a very odd time signature. So I'm like, that could be neat. I mean, it's wrong, but it's wrong in an interesting way. So I combined that, but I'm like, I need something else. And then I remembered that I wrote this really neat guitar piece like 3 or 4 years ago, and I got stuck with it because it wasn't going anywhere. So I'm just like, okay, I give up. I'm just not going to do it. It's just not going to go nowhere. And then I mashed the two of them together and came up with something I actually enjoyed. So here's Michael in the Savannah. And I very much had a story for this one in my head, which I think I narrated for during the actual concert. But yeah, here we go. Take a listen.
I do love that guitar theme.
Oh,
actually, that's
it was
so catchy,
so cool and so funky, and I just I came up with the one, and then like Xepel was talking about, just came up with a bunch of different variations with it, and I'm just like, I feel like I'm just going around in circles with nothing interesting happening. It's not going anywhere, so I just had to shelve it, and I'm really, really glad I finally found a place for it.
Nice.
When I heard the prompt, I really liked the idea of having Michael facing off with a rat or vermin, whatever it is, and like having these two themes sort of either interact or having Michael interact with it. And I knew that I was going to have two sections. That Xylo theme was always intended to be a rat-ish theme. And then I was trying to think what I could do with Michael, and I came up, what if I just used like the best hunting music that I ever came up with and was never able to actually use? So I stuffed that in there, and then as soon as I did that, a whole story came to mind. So this part is just supposed to indicate, Michael in the savannah, running around, killing Maha like you do. I decided I wanted to not just repeat it exactly. On the subject of solving problems the same way, one of the things I always do, or frequently do and should probably do less is start a piece by having instruments come in one at a time and layer themselves in. When I was layering this piece, I was trying to think of what to do with the xylo, and I came up with the idea of I wanted to have a rhythm that felt a little bit offset. So this, I guess it would be like a triplet rhythm or something over a duple meter, like 4/4 time, and then the xylo's in almost 3. Gives a sense of not quite fitting in the way I wanted to. But then I didn't want to make it too weird by doing the same thing with the drum coming in, so I just had the drum be very, very, like, super, super square. And this is all to sort of like establish the rhythm so that when you get this syncopated guitar rhythm coming in, it really does actually still work. And one thing that I did, which I don't know if is obvious to everyone, is the drums and the xylo are playing the same sort of like very square rhythm, but the drum is playing every other beat and the xylo is playing every 4 beats. And then, of course, you have to have something interesting happen at the end of every phrase, otherwise you're not Coriakin. But, so anyway, I really like that. I mean, I don't even remember what I was thinking when I wrote this initial section because it was so long ago, but it just seemed like fun. What was way more interesting was playing around with this ridiculous 11/8 xylo theme, because 11 doesn't divide into anything. It's a prime number, so nothing I did sounded quite right. So I just decided I'm going to have the drum play something sort of very stable, and then at the end it just has like one of those, like you were talking about, like this tripping thing almost at the end. And, you know, if you repeat something weird often enough, it starts sounding normal-ish. But, like, how do you divide 11 into a melody? So, I'm just looking at it right now. I have what appears to be, I divided it into 2, 3, 3, 2, 2 time? Does that make sense? Maybe it doesn't. I can't do math.
So was the 11/8 accidental or intentional?
100% accidental. It was supposed to be ba 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 ba, which is like in 4. Ba 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 ba. I don't know if you can hear me tapping, but it's supposed to be in sort of like a 12/8 sort of thing. Or but I just, when I did it, I missed one beat, and I liked it, so I kept it that way. So
Nice.
the melody is, it's kind of the only way that I could figure out that it could be, and it really boiled down to this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This way, 6, 5, combining 6 and 5. That's how I divided it, and I kept trying to come up with interesting new ways to do it, but no, nothing worked. It had to be that every time, and you know, it works fine. And then we get to this part. And the guitar part is just... The guitar part is actually ripping off Shadows Watching, if you remember that part. I did the same sort of like semitone thing. If something works, you use it again, right? Anyway, something that you might have noticed or you might not have is when that comes back later, it's basically the same thing because, again, I couldn't figure out anything differently. It's just, it's in different octaves, and some of the transitions are a little bit faster. And in the story, that's sort of to try to present that it's the same sort of situation, but now Michael knows what to do. And then it's sort of like the transition out of it flows much better, hopefully. Well, I mean, obviously, because the first time it just like ran to a screeching halt. And then, of course, this part was always intended to be Michael just like swearing. So,
sounds fitting.
Yeah, Clanlord, of course, we have the /swear command where it just puts in 4 random characters, and I just like mashed enter a million times on that. Oh man, fun times.
I think everybody forgot about that command, and now everybody uses it again after that.
Well, you know. You gotta do things enough that you gotta leave it so people forget it, and then you can come back and it's new again. Sort of like how at the end, I've trained everyone to expect fake endings, so now I just have the "it's done" ending.
And then everybody has to wait like 5 seconds to be like,
but
is it really done?
It's really done. That's
Is
it.
it really?
I mean, of course it's me. I love getting technical and talking about stuff, but the real intention was to have a sense of Michael's part is really flowing. It's really like, he's fighting, he's having a good hunt, everything's going well. And then when you get to the rat part, it's just everything just feels a little bit off. And that 11/8 time was so perfect for that because there's no way to divide it in a square way. Everything will feel off. But then you just have to figure out how to make that work musically so that it's just off enough to be interesting, but not off enough to be off-putting, if you'll pardon the pun. So.
And I think you threaded that needle well, because like I do get that feeling where I'm like, I'm trying to keep time with the beat, but like what is it? There's not anything. I'm the sort of person who needs to tap my foot to everything, and like that section is very difficult to know what I'm supposed to be doing. But it still sounds good, so you did well.
Oh, thank you.
On a side note, if you like to tap your feet to anything, listen to Numa by Tool.
Oh, jeez.
If you haven't heard that already, that is... If you get the idea of that piece, you have some good understanding of odd time signatures.
I can't say I have, but I might have to now, just for fun.
Right?
I mean, I'm trying not to blab on too much. I think I said most of the stuff I wanted to talk about. It was really... honestly just fun. Oh, actually, sorry, there was one other thing I wanted to talk about. So after we have these hunt runs to a halt, we have the little part where Michael is regaining his balance, and it's sort of like building back up to the original time signature. And one of the hardest things, again, as we've always talked about, is transitions. When you're in a hard time signature or an odd one, how do you get into it? How do you get out of it? And I chose the laziest possible way, which is to just stop and then start over again in a different time signature. And, the walk up to it made it flow better, so it didn't feel quite so jarring. But the thing I wanted to talk about is this part right here is something that's actually dear to my heart because I didn't write it. So this part I did write. But when I was stuck, and again, this is years ago, who was still playing regularly? Rakshasa. I actually sent it his way. I'm like, do you have any ideas? So he came with this really neat little melody line at the top, which is right here. And then we're back to like the main theme that I had. But the way that he added this line that used long notes when the whole thing up to here had been really, really short, really staccato, it really added a whole different character that I really, really liked. So I'm glad I was able to include that as well. So thanks, Rax.
Who knows? Maybe he listens to the podcast regularly.
You know what?
We don't know.
I hope so. Cool. But yeah, this was very much sort of one of those Frankenstein-style pieces where you're combining a bunch of different ideas into a whole. And I'm glad it worked out. I'm really, really glad I found a place for that funky like hunt rhythm to finally live. I'm glad I was able to include Rax's thing, and I'm really, really glad that I was able to do something in odd time signatures, because usually it's really hard for me. I never do it because it never feels right to me, but this time I was able to do it. Yeah. Felt good.
Well, I mean, not feeling right was sort of the point, like the vermin or the off-putting part. Like you want to feel a little off.
And normally I don't, but this one time I did. And it's
Yes.
Actually, that's a really good observation. It's so fun to find places where you feel good going in directions you normally wouldn't. Like, one of the things I love about Clanlord barding is that everyone who writes music writes stuff I never would. Like, again, like my first go-to is always Dream Drinker, of course. But also, like Always, I would not have done that. And it's so cool to, find all these things that feel so right, but also different from me. And when I get to write something that is still a Coriakin tune, but it's different enough that it feels fresh to me, I don't know, that's special.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think the Bard community is great because we are sort of this resource for each other, this well of other ideas, other ways of doing things that you wouldn't normally do yourself, but you hear other people doing it, and then it's like, oh man, I need to do more flourishes in my songs because that's all Coriakin does.
It is.
I tell myself these things.
No, you tell me as well. It's not all.
You even posted on your desktop PC just saying flourishes.
Yeah, just get to post more tiddly bits. There you go. Oh man, it's not. You know what? It's so weird that you point that out. I didn't start doing that until I came back and I think it was actually home. Yeah, it was home that I started doing that. And after that, I'm just like, I guess I live here now. And it's never stopped.
It's always there.
Well, it's been a lot of fun to talk about all of these pieces. It's always really cool to see, I mean, talking about solving problems in different ways, seeing the different ways that we interpreted this. And I can't wait for the next time we all take on a challenge like this.
Yeah, and actually all of us having the same prompt and having the same starting point and seeing where we went into similar ways and where we didn't. That was very interesting to see and to hear in the music.
Yeah, even though we had a pretty detailed prompt, we went different directions with it, and that's great. I also like just having these sort of prompts and competitions. I know we used to do a lot of them, and I think people sort of got overwhelmed by it. I know I sort of did, but I think they're a good idea, and I think we should still have them like every couple months. Seems like a good idea.
Yeah, and at first Azriel didn't wanted to commission a piece, and he didn't think about having a contest. And I think it was you, Coriakin, who said make a contest out of it. You get 3 pieces for 1 prize pool. So in the end, we have 3 pieces we can talk about, and not only one single one that gets played and maybe forgotten after that. And we have the show for it. For the whole thing.
It's always more fun to have a theme for a concert. It makes more people show up.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, we'll have to come up with another one for an upcoming concert.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where this was nice because we did sort of have a lot of lead time. I know I like having lead time, even though it doesn't really matter. I'm going to do it in one night, one way or the other. Just depends on when that's going to be. But yeah, I mean, having them every so often is nice to work towards without being too much pressure.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Well, thank you both very much for making time to stop by and chat about your pieces. And thank you for writing them as well.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And this was a lot of fun. And yeah, I'm glad we got to do this.
All right. Well, since we're wrapping up one more time, I've been Chris playing Coriakin.
I'm Sammy and I play Bingro.
I'm Evan and I play Xepel.
Awesome. And thank you so much for listening. Have a good day. Bye for now. And so it's Azriel is how we pronounce the name?
Yeah,
that's how I pronounce it.
I think you are on the you might know better than I do. Because I would pronounce it completely different in German.
How would you pronounce it?
Azriel.
That sounds so much cooler. Azriel. All right. Yeah, I'll do the. I don't have any southern twang, but I'll still do like the ridiculous North American R's.